3,000 years ago, the Mediterranean was not a primitive place. It was a thriving, interconnected, high-tech world. There were massive empires, the Egyptians with their golden pharaohs, the Hittites in modern-day Turkey, the Mycenaeans in Greece, and the sophisticated traders of Cyprus and Canaan. They had international trade routes that stretched thousands of miles. They had complex bureaucracies, professional armies, and massive stone cities that were the wonders of the age. They were as connected as we are today, tied together by a world web of bronze. And then, in the span of a single lifetime, almost all of it vanished. Cities were burned to the ground. Writing systems were forgotten. Trade stopped. The global economy evaporated. It wasn't just a recession. It was a total system failure. This is the story of the Bronze Age collapse. The first time humanity looked at the stars and realized that everything they had built could turn to ash in an instant. Something that feels like a ticking clock. To understand how it fell, you have to understand why it worked. In 1200 BCE, the world ran on bronze. It was the oil of the ancient world. If you didn't have bronze, you didn't have weapons, you didn't have tools, and you didn't have power. But to make bronze, you need two things: copper and tin. Copper was easy to find, but tin was rare. In the Mediterranean, the only way to get tin was to trade for it from places as far away as modern-day Afghanistan or even Britain. This created a globalized economy. No kingdom was self-sufficient. The king of Egypt needed the king of the Hittites. The Mycenaeans needed the merchants of the Levant. They were all too big to fail. They were a house of cards, leaning against each other for support. It was a golden age. But the problem with a perfectly tuned machine is that if one gear breaks, the whole thing grinds to a halt. Asterisk 3:15. The four horsemen of the collapse. Historians have spent centuries trying to find the one thing that destroyed this world. Was it an earthquake? A war? A drought? The terrifying reality is that it was all of them at once. It was what scientists call a perfect storm, or a multi-causal system collapse. First, the climate changed. Evidence from ancient pollen and lake sediments shows that a massive, century-long drought hit the Mediterranean. The rains stopped. The crops failed. In a world without canned food or refrigeration, if the harvest fails for 3 years in a row, the kingdom is dead. We have letters found in the ruins of ancient cities from this time. One Hittite official wrote to the king of Egypt, "It is a matter of life and death. There is no grain in our lands." Then came the earthquake storms. The region entered a period of intense tectonic activity. Massive tremors leveled palace walls. Usually, a kingdom can rebuild after an earthquake, but not if they are already starving. As the cities crumbled and the people starved, the internal skeleton of these empires snapped. The peasants, seeing their kings unable to feed them or protect them, revolted. The bureaucracy stopped functioning. Taxes weren't collected. The soldiers, unpaid, abandoned their posts. And that is when the ghosts appeared from the sea. Asterisk 5:10 music becomes chaotic, aggressive, and loud. The sound of clashing metal and distant shouting. The sea people, in the records of Ramses III of Egypt, there is a terrifying description of a mysterious confederation of invaders. He called them the Sea People. We still don't know exactly who they were. Some believe they were refugees from the drought. Others think they were professional raiders. They moved like a swarm of locusts. They didn't just raid cities, they brought their families, their wagons, and their cattle. They were looking for a new home, and they were willing to kill for it. They descended on the coastlines of the Mediterranean with iron weapons. One by one, the great cities of the Bronze Age began to go dark. The city of Ugarit, a wealthy trading hub, sent a desperate letter to its neighbors. The enemy ships are here. They have set fire to my cities and done great damage. My troops are away. My chariots are gone. The country is rendered to itself. The letter was never sent. It was found in the ruins of the city, baked hard by the fires that destroyed the building. Ugarit was wiped off the map. It was never rebuilt. By 1177 BCE, the Mycenaean palaces of Greece were smoking ruins. The Hittite Empire was gone. The grand trade routes were severed. Only Egypt managed to survive, but it was a shadow of its former self, bankrupt, exhausted, and retreating behind its borders. 7:25 music fades into a haunting, hollow wind sound. A lonely flute or violin plays a mournful melody. The aftermath was a dark age. And when I say dark age, I don't just mean a hard time. I mean a loss of human knowledge. In Greece, the art of writing literally vanished. For 400 years, nobody wrote a single word. They forgot how to build with stone. They forgot their own history. The people living in the ruins of these great palaces looked at the massive stones and believed they must have been built by giants, the Cyclopes, because they couldn't imagine humans having such technology. The population of the Mediterranean plummeted. People fled to the mountains to live as subsistence farmers, hiding from the raiders on the coast. The world became small again. The world web was torn to shreds. It took humanity almost half a millennium to recover. When the light finally came back, when the Greeks started writing again, they had to invent a brand new alphabet. They had to rediscover the world all over again. 845. So why does this matter to us? We live in a world that is more interconnected than the Bronze Age kings could have ever dreamed. Our tin is rare earth minerals from China. Our grain is oil from the Middle East and wheat from Ukraine. We rely on a global supply chain that is incredibly efficient, but also incredibly fragile. The Bronze Age collapse is a reminder that civilization is not a given. It is a fragile agreement between millions of people. It is a garden that must be tended. If the climate shifts, if the trade routes break, and if the systems we rely on fail all at once, we aren't as far from the dark ages as we like to think. The kings of the Bronze Age thought they were eternal. They built monuments to last forever, but the desert eventually reclaimed them. The silence of the Bronze Age is a warning. It tells us that the world doesn't end with a bang or a whimper. It ends when the connections between us are severed, and we forget how to speak to one another across the sea. Look at the ruins. They aren't just history, they are a mirror. Fade out audio slowly with the sound of wind and a single echoing bell note.